Hey guys, it's Amy at Zoe Beck, and I'm going to do my favorite books that I read in 2019. So I have 5 fiction books and 5 nonfiction books that I want to tell you about that were my favorites of this year. But I'm also going to tell you about my 3 favorite rereads and also my most disappointing book and my worst book of the year that I read. Anyway, so let's start with the rereads. I am a big rereader. I would say I reread a lot compared to some people. I love revisiting books, and there's certain authors, Nilling Singh, that I read all the time, reread all the time. I had some really great rereads this year. I reread David Eddings' Belgariad series, but the 3 I'm going to pick out are the ones that I enjoyed the most. And of course, some of these are on my favorite books of all time, which I think I did a video on back in June. So the first one I read in March was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Steve Donahue did a read-along that everybody mandatory had to do it. And of course, I reread it because it is my favorite book of all time. So I don't need to talk about this, but this was fantastic. And then in July, for Jane Austen July, I read Persuasion, which is my second favorite Jane Austen book. And really close to Pride and Prejudice and how much I love it. So I enjoyed this reread as well. I hadn't read it, in several years. I couldn't believe how long it had been. It'd been a long time for me. I don't know, it'd been a couple of years, at least, 4 or 5 years. I don't remember now, but it was a while longer than I wanted it to be. So I really enjoyed that. And then my third favorite reread was Helter Skelter, the true story of the Manson murders by Vincent Bellagiosi and Kurt Gentry. And I've read this, this is my 3rd or 4th read. I'm pretty sure it's my 4th. And I did this time by audiobook because I'd gotten it on sale one day. So I really enjoyed the audiobook for this. It was great revisiting this. It's it's my favorite, sorry, there's a cat here. Favorite nonfiction or true crime book. It was probably it wasn't my first, but it was in that range of the first ones. The first one that really blew my mind kind of thing of how weird people can be of why they would pick certain things to decide their whole cult is on. I don't know. It's still a fascinating book to me. I really, really enjoyed my reread. So I'm glad I did that this year. Again, it was the 50th anniversary in August. So it was just, and again, I hadn't read it in probably over 10 years. So it was really great to reread them. So let's go to my most disappointing read of the year. And that was C.J. Sansom's Dissolution. So this was the first book in the Matthew Shardlake series. I know people love this series. This is a historical mystery series that takes place during the time, or starts in the time of Thomas Cromwell and Henry VIII. And the monasteries are kind of under attack by them for, to be taken, or to be deconstructed and the land taken and money stuff. And at this point, somebody has died and he's gone down to investigate something. I can't even recall really. I remember the mystery was okay and it was interesting, the twists and turns. But my problem was him. And the main character did not do anything for me. I disliked him very much from the beginning. I never warmed to him, and I hated half of his decisions throughout the whole thing. It just made me angry, maybe because he was so angry. And I know that's part of his character. So I know people like that, like an unlikable character in some ways, but I don't know, for some reason in my mysteries, that doesn't work so well for me. I don't care so much. And I got to the point where I just didn't care. I read over 300 pages in this book, and it was a pretty long book. I don't remember if it was in the 400s. I was within I was less than 100 pages from the end, and I went, I am done. And I put the book down because of something that happened. Anyway, so it was the most disappointing read, which means I did not finish it, but I hated it. Anyway, but let's talk about real hate. So we'll get all the hate out and then I'll just do all the love. So I'm not sure this is going to work. Let's see here. My most hated book of the year was Ghostwall by Sarah Moss. So I'd never read anything by Sarah Moss, and this really does not come off very well, but anyway, that's the book I read. Anyway, I hated this book. I know some people probably have it on their best list, but I hated this book. And it wasn't the girl character that I hated. It was how things went And the end was just unbelievable and ridiculous. And I just thought, this was stupid. It was all a waste of time. This did not do anything I wanted it to. It did not work on any level. I probably have a ranty video somewhere where I read it, but I hated this book. This is my only 1-star read of the year of a book I finished because I hated it so much. Most other books I DNF'd. I was really good about that. Even, as I said, Dissolution, I got to with 100 pages at the end and I DNF'd it because I hated it so much. This was such a short book that I forced myself to finish it, and now I wish I hadn't because it sucked. Anyway, I did not like it. I mean, some other people, as I said, they think it's gorgeous and all this. No, that did nothing for me. It was ridiculous. I'm just going to say ridiculous. So I won't go too far onto that. But let's get into the fun stuff. So I'm going to do my I have top 5 of both nonfiction and fiction. That's the way it just kind of worked out for me, as I found that my top 10 was split. So I'm like, well, what the heck? We'll just do 5 and 5. So I'll do the 5 of nonfiction and then fiction. And then 4, we'll do that. Sounds like fun, right? So, did I put these? I put these upside down. That does not help me when I put them in order. So 5th nonfiction of the year was John Adams by David McCullough. I just finished this just before the end of the year, but it was an excellent biography on John Adams and the whole through the revolution and then through his presidency and his work as a foreign that word just went right out of my head. I can't think what you call it. You know that thing where they're for ambassadors. Anyway, sorry, I don't know why that word went out of my head. Anyway, so this was an excellent book on his whole life and telling things from letters, and his correspondence. His wife was just phenomenal. Abigail is awesome. And so I really, really enjoyed this read. And again, I listened to this on audio, although the audio was really slow by Nelson Rugger, but if you speed it up, you're okay. But overall, I really enjoyed that. And it was number 5 of my nonfiction. Let's see here. Of my fiction, here, I have to pull up my pad again here, sorry. And of course, nothing is where I want it. So number 5 was, of course, an Ilingi Sing. I don't think that was any surprise. But Wolf Rain, which is, I think it's book number 18. Oh, I forgot to check the number. In the Side Changeling series. So it's in the next section. There's like a season 1 and a season 2. This is in season 2. So it's like, after the first 15 books, the next, I'm pretty sure this is number 18. So this follows a couple that, of shift change, or one's a Sai and one's a changeling, and their story is just so cute. I just love it. It does a lot with have been being traumatized and coming out of that, and also getting your revenge in a way. Anyway, but this is one of the good ones. I've already reread it once this year. I read it once and then I reread it, and when I get my physical copy, I get it. Paperbacks only in this series. I will read it again probably at the end of February when that comes in. So that is why it is number 5. Number 4 of, that's another one in this. Sorry. I thought I had my mind all together. Of nonfiction is Good Talk by Mira Jacob. This one was a surprise for me. I picked this up in Nonfiction November from the library. I picked it up because I saw it on the Reading Women's shortlist, I think, for their top nonfiction. This was so good. The conversations in here are so important, dealing with somebody whose family came from India, and who were Americans, like grew up completely here, but the struggles with that, and then she marries a white man, and then their child is confused about race, and it's the year Trump was elected, and it's very, very powerful. The conversations here, again, it's over her whole life and talking to different people, and and different backgrounds and things, and how she deals with her in-laws and what they think compared to what she thinks. And it was really, really good. I really recommend this. Again, it's a graphic novel because it has pictures, but they're just kind of like the pictures there. It's more the bubbles of what the actual conversation is happening. You focus on that, and it was so good. I totally recommend that book. That was an excellent book. Number 4 of my fiction is 20 Years After by Alexander Dumas. This is the second book in the D'Artagnan romances. This was translated from the French by David Coward. So I've had this book on this is one of my oldest books on my TBR, and I was so glad I finally continued on in this series. And this was just a fun romp. And again, that's my love of the Three Musketeers, is that it's a romp. And this was just the same. It's 20 years later. They're a little older, a little grayer, a little smarter, and then some not so smart. And they all get caught up in politics again. All on different sides for a while there, which was really interesting to see how they split and come back together. And I really enjoyed this book, and I'm really looking forward to continuing this series this year. As I said, Three Musketeers is one of my favorite books of all time, so it's no surprise that the second book in that series made my list. So number 3 of nonfiction, oh, it's on my tablet again, sorry. Anyway, is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I really loved listening to this audiobook. I got it from the library. She reads it. It's her story. I totally enjoyed this. I'm so glad I got it. It took me a while because, you know, library holds were taking forever, but it was so worth it. And her talking about her life and her family, and then all the politics and going into being in the White House. And I'm so excited that she, you know, spent time after she got out that she wrote this book. It was just phenomenal. And again, she is a great role model for so many people. And I was so glad that I got to listen to this. And again, it was great to hear her voice, you know, telling us, or, you know, talking about it, all this stuff. And it was just heartbreaking in some parts and really, really powerful in others. So I'm really glad I read that. And again, it's number 3 on my nonfiction. Number 3 in my fiction is Bleak House by Charles Dickens. Oh, I love this book. This book was a book that I tried to read serially with Katie at Books and Things, and I just could not do the only read a little bit at a time. We all know me and that doesn't work. So this October for Victorian literature, I picked this up and read it all the way through. It was fantastic. This was such a ride. And so there's so much stuff going on here. So many great characters, so many funny moments, but then so many sad, tragic things. It was just, and it all kind of interwoved in such a way. It was fantastic. And I just love this. And this definitely has brought me back to going, I need to read Dickens. And that's, again, I have started doing that, but I'm so glad I picked up this book. And even though it was kind of in the middle of all of his books and I was gonna, you know, be a purist and start from the beginning, I don't care. This was an excellent book. This is definitely a new favorite. This is one I will come back to, and I definitely will reread. Not read right now because I have so many of his books still to read, but it's definitely a book that I will revisit, and I'm so glad that I took the time to read that. It was just phenomenal. So, number 2 in nonfiction is Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson, a story of justice and redemption. This book was so powerful. I just read it in early December with a Book Olive's common booktube read, or how was common read? I remember how it was, that booktube common read. I think that's what it was. Anyway, but I read it within that week, the first week of December, and it was just so powerful. It talks about Bryan Stevenson's work as a lawyer in the Innocence Project, or I can't remember what Equal Justice Initiative. So he set up an office there with other lawyers, and they mostly helped death row inmates. And then they went on to help children under a certain age who were incarcerated for life and other things. And it was so powerful to know that the justice system is not perfect. There really isn't a whole lot of mercy, and there isn't, sometimes I don't think there's all that much, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't, what some things get a certain amount of time for, and other things which are so much less, or seems to me less, maybe that's not the way to put it, but like the numbers were all off. And again, this comes down to people of color getting more shafted for things more, you know, than others. But there was there were white guys that were in here as well that were also on death row and stuff. But it was a very powerful read. I totally recommend this. It is hard to, I think, to read. I mean, it took me a week to read it, which I don't, you know, as I said, for not a huge book, it was written so well, and your emotions are just up and down, mostly just disgusted at the system, I guess. It was such a hard read, but so powerful, and I totally recommend that. My number 2 of my fiction was That Old Scoundrel Death by Bill Kreider. This was the 25th and last book in the Dan Rhodes mysteries, and I've talked about this, and I've cried a few times about this. Bill Kreider passed away in 2018, so this was the last book of the series, and you can tell he wrote it knowing that it was the last book because of some of the themes in here, and it was so powerful. I'm not going to cry again, but I'm so looking forward to my reread of the whole series because I've never reread any of the books. So I've read them almost, you know, as I said, he wrote them over, you know, about 33 years. And there's 25 books, so it's almost a book a year, not quite. There's a couple of years where he missed out because he was writing other series that I didn't get into. This series is the one that I love, and it is my favorite mystery series probably of all time. Just clearly, since I've been watching, so I can't wait to reread this. But this book was just a great ending to the series. Still hurts me that it's the last one, but it had to be on this list because it was so great. Yes, again, I cried up. Okay. Oh, okay. So, here we go. Our number 1 for nonfiction is Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. Sorry. So this was really powerful. This is Medicine and What Matters in the End. And I think the reason that I picked this up finally this year is that, again, my grandfather passed away earlier this year, or this summer. And so that was really hard on the family. And I wish I'd read this before that, because it does talk about things. Again, he was 101, so he had lived. But in the last, you know, 4 years, my grandparents had been living in an assisted living. My grandmother is now still in one now, but it was really powerful to read this and to know that maybe we didn't always ask all the right questions. We asked a lot of them, and then we did listen to them, but I wish I'd listened a little better sometimes. Because I didn't quite get it, but now I think I'm more eyes open to the, you know, looking at the end of life thing. And again, I'm looking at it as my grandparents who are when my grandmother's 96, and you know, and that kind of thing. But it's also talking about people who develop cancer and other illnesses where they know that they're not going to live very long, and how they go about this. So it was just a very powerful read to me. It was very timely in that maybe, I mean, again, it was a little off because my grandfather had just passed, but my grandmother is still around, and we are, you know, asking her what she wants to do, not just, you know, making her do anything or not doing things. And we're just, I think it was just very powerful to be kind and keep them informed in the end. I just think it's very important not to treat them, you know, as kids, I guess is what I want to say. I don't know how to say that, but this is such a great book. I'm not explaining this right, but this book was so important to me, and I'm so glad I finally read it. It's definitely going to be one of my favorites on, you know, on that topic, just of opening my eyes to certain things that I didn't think about completely. I mean, I think we did as well as we could, but it's just still like, oh, we could do better. And so I'm hoping that going forward, that's what I'm going to do with my grandmother now, and maybe in about 20, 30 years when I have to deal with my parents. I'm hoping it's going to be that long. We'll see. So anyway, it was a gorgeous book, and I just think he wrote it really well. And I do want to pick up some of his other books. It's just, this is the one was just so powerful. And then my favorite book, fiction. I'll just say it probably was my favorite book, but it's also my favorite new series. And so I'm only going to show the first book, but you know, I read all 5 this year, and I read them within the first 4 months of the year. I've already started rereading the series. I love this series, and I'm so glad I found it using Try a Chapter tag. And I definitely want to do more of those this year to go through more of my urban fantasies. But it is the Others series by Anne Bishop. The first book is Written in Red. I love this book. I love this series. There is just so much to this that is what I love about urban fantasy. It has to do with a alternate timeline of a world where others control most of the land in North America, and humans lease certain parts of it, and how the conflict over land and resources and just being human or other. And again, this was just a great series. The characters are all great. Cast assembly. What do you call that? Oh my God, my brain. We're at the end, guys. It has like so many different people, different perspectives. You get to know the characters from book 1 through 5. They're just so phenomenal. And even though book 5 probably is not what people want, to me it made sense. I saw what the author was doing. By the time I got to the end, I understood why it wrapped up that way and not the way maybe some other people would think it should go. I just thought it was perfect. Now, well, I mean, okay, the whole series is not perfect, but I think how it ended made sense to how the whole story went. And again, I read these all really close together within 4 months. And then I already have reread the first 3 already once. I didn't get to number 4. I was going to read that in December and it just didn't happen. But I'm hoping to reread the last 2 books again, and then hopefully start the next series that's connected to this. I know the first 2 books are already out, and the 3rd book I think is coming out later this year. So I'm so looking forward to trying some of her other series, because this was the first books I read by her, and I am in love with her writing, and I can't wait to do more. But this was definitely my favorite series. But I'll put this book up of the year. So that is it. Those are all the books I wanted to talk about of my favorites. Fictions, non-fictions, rereads, maybe 1 disappointment. No, really, 1 disappointment and 1 most hated book of the year. So, I don't know if any of you guys read any of these books. As I said, none of these were really from this year. I mean, there's a couple that were, but most of them were stuff backlist off my shelf, or stuff I got from the library. So I guess some of them were new, but not too many. So anyway, what was your favorite book of the year? You let me know. What was your most hated? I want to know that. It's interesting because, again, I know a lot of people liked Ghostwall. I hated it. And a lot of people like Dissolution. I hated it. Can't help it. That's the way it is. Everybody's different. Anyway, so I'll see you guys later. Bye.